What if the greatest secrets are not buried with kings, but with those who kept them alive? What if a 4,000-year-old tomb, empty of treasure and even a body, held a message more terrifying and profound than any curse? We journey deep beneath the sands of Saqqara, not just to uncover the story of a man, but to decode the very essence of a civilization poised between eternal glory and utter collapse. The message we found will change everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. The great Roman philosopher and emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look back over the past, with its changing empires that rose and fell, and you can foresee the future too." Nowhere does this sentiment echo more powerfully than in the shifting sands of Egypt, where the ghosts of pharaohs and the whispers of their forgotten knowledge still linger. Today, we unravel the story of a man who stood at the very precipice of history, a royal doctor who held the secrets of life and death in his hands, and whose tomb reveals a terrifying truth about the fragility of power and the eternal human quest for immortality.
Welcome to Secrets of the Ancients, where ancient mysteries awaken.
In the year 2024, amidst the silent, watchful pyramids of Saqqara, a Swiss-French archaeological team unearthed a tomb that defied expectations. This wasn't the glittering prize of a pharaoh, but something far more intimate and arguably more revealing. It was the final resting place of a royal doctor, a man named Teti Neb-Hefu, who lived over 4 millennia ago. This was a man who held the pharaoh's very life in his hands, a custodian of secrets that only deities and kings were meant to hear. And yet when his tomb was opened, there was no body, no golden sarcophagus, just vivid paintings, untouched by time, and cryptic symbols carved into the stone. Who was this man, and why was he buried with spells linked to a terrifying scorpion deity? To understand Teti Neb-Hefu is to understand the world he inhabited. He lived around 4,100 years ago, during one of Egypt's most mysterious and turbulent turning points. This was the end of the Old Kingdom, an era that had given the world the Great Pyramids. The sun still glinted off those freshly built monuments, but the shadows were lengthening. Pharaoh Pepi II had ruled for an unprecedented 90 years, but his long reign had seen the foundations of the state begin to crack. Centralized power was slipping away to regional governors. The life-giving floods of the Nile were becoming unpredictable, and the specter of famine and civil unrest loomed. It was an age of profound anxiety, a world teetering on the edge of glory and collapse. And in this shaky, uncertain period, the mysterious doctor thrived. The most bizarre part of the discovery was the state of the tomb. While it had been robbed of its treasures long ago, what remained was, for a historian, infinitely more valuable: the words and images left on the walls. The paintings were still astonishingly vibrant, a riot of color that had survived thousands of years underground. They depicted jars, containers, strange abstract patterns, and geometric shapes, a visual inventory of a sophisticated mind. And then there were the hieroglyphs, lines of sacred script carved with a soul-deep precision. These inscriptions revealed Teti Neb-Hefu's true identity. He wasn't just any doctor. He was the Conjurer of Circuit. Now, to a modern ear, Conjurer sounds like a stage magician. But in ancient Egypt, this was a title of immense power and dread. Circuit was the scorpion goddess, a sacred and terrifying deity who personified both the venomous sting of the scorpion and the power to heal it. She was a protector of the living, a guardian against toxic elements. To be her conjurer meant Teti Neb-Hefu was the ultimate specialist in treating dangerous stings and bites, a field of critical importance in a land teeming with snakes and scorpions. In an era where a single scorpion sting could fell the strongest warrior, this man was a living antidote. He was a master of both practical medicine and sacred magic, for the Egyptians saw no distinction between the two. To heal was to engage in a divine battle against the forces of chaos. But that wasn't all. His tomb proclaimed another title, one seen only once before in all of ancient Egyptian history: Director of Medicinal Plants. This title elevates him from a mere specialist to a grandmaster of pharmacology. In a vast land of sand, one might wonder about the scope of his pharmacy. But the banks of the Nile were a fertile cradle of life. The ancient Egyptians cultivated a sophisticated herbal medicine that, in some cases, would hold up to modern scientific scrutiny. They created pills, ointments, and inhalers, often combining an active ingredient with a flavoring agent and a delivery medium, a methodology hauntingly familiar to any modern pharmacist. This is where we must pause and reflect on the philosophical underpinnings of their worldview. For us, medicine is a science of chemical interactions. For the Egyptians, it was an art of cosmic balance. A plant didn't just contain chemical compounds. It contained a measure of divine essence, a piece of the life force of the earth itself. Teti Neb-Hefu, as the director of medicinal plants, was not just a botanist. He was a gatekeeper to the earth's healing power. He understood which leaf, which root, which oil could restore balance to a human body thrown into chaos by illness. His knowledge would have seemed like sorcery. Consider the ingredients mentioned in the transcript: crocodile dung and acacia mixed with honey. To us, this sounds bizarre, even repulsive. But let's analyze it from their perspective. Honey is a known natural preservative and has antiseptic properties. Acacia gum has been used for centuries as a soothing agent and emulsifier. The crocodile dung, while seemingly unhygienic, may have contained certain molds or bacteria that, by sheer chance, produced antibiotic substances, a primitive, accidental form of penicillin. They were operating through millennia of trial and error, observation and faith. They were throwing everything they had at the great enemy, death, and sometimes their strange concoctions worked. As if these two rare titles weren't enough, Teti Neb-Hefu held a third: Chief Dentist. This title is almost never seen in ancient records. Evidence of Egyptian dentistry is incredibly rare, yet it was a field of immense suffering. The Egyptian diet, particularly the stone-ground bread, was filled with grit and sand. This led to a horrific condition called dental attrition, where the enamel was worn away, exposing the sensitive pulp and leading to abscesses, infections, and tooth loss. Imagine the constant, agonizing pain that was a fact of life for so many. They improvised solutions. They crafted the world's oldest known toothpaste from crushed rock, mint, and pepper, which, ironically, would have only exacerbated the problem for the gums by being highly abrasive. They invented mouthwashes from celery and herbs. Some mummies have even been found with crude metal braces and gold wires, though it's unclear if these were functional orthodontic devices for the living or merely cosmetic additions for the afterlife. For one man to hold three such rare and vital titles, Conjurer of the Scorpion Goddess, Director of Medicinal Plants, and Chief Dentist, is extraordinary. Archaeologists believe this points to only one conclusion. Teti Neb-Hefu was almost certainly the royal physician, the man who treated the pharaoh himself. Perhaps he served the long-lived Pepi II, his medical and magical prowess contributing to the king's remarkable longevity. If so, Teti Neb-Hefu would have had a front-row seat to the slow, agonizing decay of the Old Kingdom, watching the golden age crumble from within the palace walls. He was a man of immense knowledge and power, living at a time of immense fragility and fear. His empty tomb, with its vibrant paintings and powerful inscriptions, is not a sign of failure, but a testament to a legacy that transcended the mortal coil. His body may be lost to time, but his story, carved in stone, remains. The story of Teti Neb-Hefu is not an anomaly. It is a window into a medical system of staggering sophistication. The ancient Egyptians were practicing medicine on a level that feels eerily modern. They had specialized doctors, rudimentary hospitals, and even medical schools where both men and women were permitted to study. A remarkably progressive stance for the ancient world. They practiced surgery with a toolkit that would be recognizable today: scalpels, forceps, and even sutures to close wounds. They had specialists who treated only the eyes, others the teeth, the stomach, or even what they cryptically called hidden diseases. This level of specialization speaks to a deep and evolving body of knowledge. They knew how to clean and dress wounds, set broken bones with splints wrapped in linen, and had methods to prevent infection. They even had proctologists, a field many might consider a modern specialty. Their ingenuity extended to creating the world's first known functional prosthetics. A 3,000-year-old wooden toe, complete with leather straps, was discovered attached to a mummy, designed to help its owner walk normally again. This isn't just a cosmetic addition. It's a compassionate, practical solution to a physical disability. It shows a deep-seated desire to restore wholeness and dignity to the human body. Perhaps most shockingly, recent studies suggest they even attempted to remove tumors. A 4,000-year-old skull of a man in his 30s showed signs of past tumors, and around them, clear surgical cut marks made with a metal tool. This indicates a breathtaking attempt to intervene in cases of cancer. Was it treatment? Was it a post-mortem autopsy to understand the disease? We don't know, but the very attempt is a leap of medical imagination. Another skull of a woman over 50 showed similar marks, but with evidence of healed fractures from an earlier injury, suggesting her treatment may have actually been successful. To be a healer in this society was to be a priest, a scientist, and a magician all at once. The Egyptians believed sickness could be both physical and spiritual, a disruption of cosmic order. Therefore, a doctor might recite a spell while applying a healing salve. For them, the prayer was as essential as the poultice, and we must be careful not to dismiss this as mere superstition. The psychological power of ritual, the placebo effect, the comfort of belief, these are potent forces in healing that modern medicine is only now beginning to fully appreciate. A lot of their treatments worked, and their reputation was so great that leaders from across the ancient world, from Persia to the Aegean, sought out Egyptian doctors. Even the Greek poet Homer declared that the Egyptians were the most skilled healers of all. Of course, their understanding was not perfect. They believed the heart, not the brain, was the seat of thought and emotion. The brain's true function was a mystery to them. Yet their core methodology, observe symptoms, diagnose, and treat, is the very foundation of modern medicine. They prayed over the wound, yes, but they also cleaned it, stitched it, and healed it. Their most famous physician, Imhotep, was a true polymath, an architect, a priest, and a healer who lived 2,000 years before Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine. Imhotep was so revered that he was eventually deified, worshipped as a god of medicine. A human being so brilliant, so compassionate, that his people elevated him to the heavens. It leads to a fascinating thought. Perhaps the Hippocratic oath we swear today should be the Imhopic oath instead. These people weren't just laying the foundations of pyramids, they were laying the foundations of healthcare itself. The desire to preserve the body to cheat time and decay is a thread that runs through all of Egyptian history. Yet, for all their skill, most tombs were eventually looted, and most mummies were disturbed. But a few have remained untouched, their secrets held in a silent, eternal embrace. They puzzle us, and in some cases, they frighten us. One such mystery is the Bashiri mummy, also known as the Untouchable One. Discovered in 1919 by none other than Howard Carter, the man who would later find Tutankhamun's tomb, this mummy remains wrapped to this day. The reason is not superstition, but a profound respect for the limits of our own knowledge. The mummy is so intricately wrapped, with a delicate fabric over the face bearing a unique pyramid-like design, that researchers fear any attempt to unwrap it would cause irreversible damage. It is a perfect embodiment of the archaeologist's golden rule. If you are not sure you can preserve it, do not touch it. Modern technology, however, allows us to peek inside without disturbing the wrappings. X-ray scans have revealed the mummy belongs to a man about 5 feet tall who lived during the Ptolemaic era, roughly 2,300 years ago. The scans even uncovered an inscription of his name, though it's difficult to tell if it says Bashiri or Nen. The casing is a masterpiece of funerary art, depicting the mummy flanked by the goddesses Isis and Nephthys, the four sons of Horus, and the jackal-headed god Anubis standing guard at his feet. He remains a silent sentinel, a puzzle we may never fully solve. Another such case is the mummy of Isetemkheb, the sister wife of the high priest in Pharaoh Pinjam II. The French archaeologist Gaston Maspero made the conscious decision to leave her mummy untouched, respecting her peaceful repose due to her amazing state of preservation. Again, X-rays have given us a glimpse into her story. They revealed amulets wrapped around her neck and arms, and they told a tale of a life lived to old age, marked by dental issues and arthritis. Her story also touches on a controversial aspect of royal Egyptian life: incestuous marriage. Isetemkheb was her husband's sister. To our modern sensibilities, this is abhorrent, but for the pharaohs, it was a sacred duty. They saw themselves as living gods, and their bloodline was divine, a gift from the heavens that could not be diluted by mixing with mortals. Their goal was to preserve the purity of this divine essence. It is a stark reminder that we must be cautious when judging the morals of the past by the standards of the present. Their world operated on a different cosmic and social logic. While the Habsburgs of Europe pursued a similar path of inbreeding that led to genetic disaster and the infamous Habsburg jaw, the Egyptians practiced it for millennia. What did they know that we don't? Or what consequences were they simply willing to accept in the name of divine purity? Both the Bashiri mummy and Isetemkheb were lucky. They remain whole, their eternal rest undisturbed. The most famous pharaoh of all, however, was not so fortunate. King Tutankhamun. His name is synonymous with the wonders of ancient Egypt. His tomb, discovered in 1922, was a time capsule, an unlooted treasure trove that stunned the world. But the story of his mummy is a tragic and brutal one, a cautionary tale about the collision between our thirst for knowledge and our duty of preservation. When the nested coffins were finally opened in 1925, the researchers faced a serious problem. The mummy was stuck. Over the millennia, the sacred anointing oils and resins that had been poured over the body, an estimated 2 buckets worth, had hardened, effectively gluing the boy king and his magnificent golden mask to the bottom of the solid gold coffin. Howard Carter's team was faced with a terrible dilemma. To study the mummy, they had to remove it. Their first attempt was to place the coffins in the hot Egyptian sun for hours, hoping the 149 degrees F heat would melt the hardened resin. It failed. The mummy remained stuck fast. What followed was, by modern standards, a brutal dissection. To get the mummy out, they had to cut the torso in half at the hips. They disarticulated the arms. They used hot knives to detach the head from the golden mask. They made an incision around the jaw and neck to examine the teeth. Each part was treated with hot paraffin wax for stability and later reattached with resin. From a scientific perspective, they did what they thought was necessary. They documented everything meticulously. They learned that Tutankhamun suffered from malaria and a rare bone disorder. They identified his parents through DNA analysis. They uncovered a wealth of information about his life and death. But from a philosophical and ethical standpoint, the story is deeply troubling. In their quest for knowledge, did they destroy the very thing they sought to understand? The body they had so carefully extracted was no longer the sacred vessel the ancient priests had prepared for eternity. It was a collection of damaged, separated parts. They had opened the tomb to find a king, but in the end, they left behind a specimen. This raises a profound question that echoes through the halls of every museum in the world. Who owns the past? Do the dead have a right to rest in peace? Or does our desire for knowledge give us the right to disturb them? Carter and his team acted according to the standards of their time, but their actions force us to confront the ethics of our own curiosity. Should they have left him in his coffin, or did they do the right thing? There is no easy answer. The story of mummification is not confined to Egypt. It is a global human story, a testament to our species' enduring refusal to simply let go of our dead. In 2023, near Cairo, archaeologists announced the discovery of the most ancient and complete mummy yet found in the country. A 4,300-year-old individual named Hatshepsut, covered in layers of gold leaf. This find pushes back the timeline of sophisticated mummification, showing that these complex rituals were being practiced even earlier than previously thought. We also have the story of Hatshepsut, the great female pharaoh who ruled as a king, building magnificent temples and expanding trade routes. When her tomb was found, her sarcophagus was empty. But years later, a mummy in another tomb, initially unidentified, was matched to her through a single molar tooth found in a box bearing her name. A queen's identity, lost for millennia, was restored by a tiny piece of dental evidence. Then there is Ramesses the Great, perhaps the most powerful pharaoh in Egyptian history. He lived to be over 90 and fathered over 100 children. His mummy's journey is as epic as his life. Moved from his original tomb to protect it from robbers, he was eventually rediscovered in the 1800s in a secret royal cache. But his body was deteriorating. In the 1970s, archaeologists decided to fly him to Paris for conservation treatment. There was just one problem: modern international law. A body, even a 3,000-year-old one, cannot be transported without a passport. And so, in one of the most surreal moments in archaeological history, Ramesses II was issued an Egyptian passport. His occupation was listed as king, deceased. A great pharaoh, who once commanded armies and built empires, was now subject to the same bureaucratic procedures as any modern tourist. Not all well-preserved bodies are the result of intentional mummification. In 1971, in China, the tomb of a Han Dynasty noblewoman named Xin Zhui, or Lady Dai, was discovered. After 2,000 years, her body was almost perfectly preserved. Her skin was soft, her hair was intact, and her limbs were still flexible. The unique, oxygen-poor and moist conditions of her tomb had created a natural preservation that outshone even the Egyptian masters. She died of a heart attack around the age of 50, and her tomb was filled with lacquerware, silks, and musical instruments, a snapshot of a life of luxury. And then there is Ötzi the Iceman, discovered in the Alps in 1991. Initially mistaken for a modern mountaineer, he turned out to be a 5,300-year-old man from the Copper Age, naturally mummified by the ice. His body is a treasure trove of information. We know what he ate for his last meal, that he suffered from arthritis and intestinal parasites, and that he had dozens of tattoos that may have been a form of acupuncture. He was a time traveler, a perfectly preserved messenger from a lost world. From the sands of Egypt to the ice of the Alps, from the deliberate art of the embalmer to the accidental perfection of nature, these bodies connect us to our deep past. They are not just objects of scientific curiosity, they are human beings. They had lives, loves, fears, and hopes. And in their silent repose, they teach us the most profound lesson of all, that in the face of the great abyss of death, humanity has always fought back, with science, with art, with faith, and with an undying hope for eternity. Sometimes, the secrets of the ancients are not hidden in the bodies of the dead, but in the colossal structures they built, structures so advanced they defy easy explanation and push the boundaries of what we thought was possible. Two such enigmas lie in Saqqara, the subterranean labyrinth of the Serapeum and the revolutionary step pyramid of Djoser. In 1850, the French scientist Auguste Mariette, searching for manuscripts, stumbled upon the head of a sphinx sticking out of the sand. It was the entrance to the Serapeum of Saqqara, an underground tomb built to honor the sacred Apis bulls. Inside, he found a sight that continues to baffle engineers to this day. 24 enormous granite sarcophagi, each weighing up to 70 tons, the weight of 50 cars. These weren't just big boxes. They were masterpieces of precision engineering, with perfectly flat surfaces and exact 90-degree angles. The official explanation is that these were the burial containers for the sacred Apis bulls, animals believed to be manifestations of the god Ptah. But this explanation raises more questions than it answers. Why build boxes of such immense size and impossible precision for bulls, when pharaohs were buried in coffins that barely fit their bodies? Why use granite, an incredibly hard stone to work, when softer limestone would have sufficed? And how did they move them? The tunnels are narrow, only slightly wider than the boxes themselves. There is no room for hundreds of laborers to pull them. There are no signs of soot on the ceilings, meaning they must have worked in near-total darkness. This has led to a fascinating, though controversial, alternative theory. What if these boxes weren't tombs at all? What if they were powerful energy devices? The theory suggests that the Egyptians, masters of fermentation, could have placed organic matter inside these perfectly sealed granite boxes. As the matter fermented, it would release gases, building up immense pressure. Granite, when subjected to such pressure, exhibits piezoelectric properties. Its quartz crystals generate a tiny electric charge. Were these giant stone boxes not sarcophagi, but ancient batteries or resonant chambers, designed to harness some form of energy we no longer understand? The discovery of stones piled on top of the lids suggests an attempt to increase the seal and the internal pressure. It's a wild theory, but the sheer impossibility of the mainstream explanation forces us to consider that we might be looking at a technology that is completely alien to our way of thinking. A similar mystery surrounds the very first pyramid, the Step Pyramid of Djoser, built some 4,700 years ago. We think we know how it was built, by stacking successively smaller rectangular structures, or mastabas, on top of each other, likely using massive ramps to haul the stones. But a radical new theory suggests a far more sophisticated method, one that involves a massive underground water system. Surrounding the pyramid is a huge trench, or dry moat, nearly 2 miles long and 65 feet deep. For a long time, it was assumed to be a quarry, but its design is impractical for quarrying. A new theory proposes that this moat was part of a complex hydraulic system designed to collect rainwater. This water, the theory goes, could have been funneled into shafts beneath the pyramid to power a giant hydraulic lift. Imagine a huge wooden platform at the bottom of a central shaft. Water floods in and the platform rises, lifting a multi-ton stone block with it. Once the stone is in place, the water is released and the platform descends, ready for the next block. It is, in essence, a water-powered elevator, a work of genius that would have allowed the Egyptians to work smarter, not harder. Of course, this theory is also highly debated. Would there have been enough rainfall? Would building the lift have been more work than just using ramps? We don't have the answers yet, but the very possibility opens up a new dimension to our understanding of Egyptian engineering. It shows us a people who were not just masters of brute force, but masters of the natural world, capable of harnessing the power of water to create monuments that would last for eternity. Whether through ramps or water lifts, they were not just building tombs, they were building a ladder to the heavens. From the empty tomb of a scorpion conjuring doctor to the brutalized body of a boy king, from the impossible precision of the Serapeum to the ingenious engineering of the first pyramid, what is the final message that these 3,000-year-old hieroglyphs and monuments have for us? The lesson, I believe, is one of profound duality. The ancient Egyptians were masters of life and death. They developed sophisticated medicine to extend life, yet they devoted their greatest resources to preparing for the afterlife. They were brilliant engineers and scientists, yet their science was inseparable from magic and faith. They revered the human body, preserving it with incredible care, yet our own quest for knowledge has, at times, led us to desecrate it. They teach us that civilizations, like people, are fragile. The old kingdom which built the pyramids seemed eternal, yet it crumbled into dust. Power, they remind us, is fleeting. But knowledge, carved into stone, whispered in spells and embodied in practice, can echo through millennia. The story of the ancients is ultimately our own story. It is the story of the human struggle against time, chaos, and oblivion. It is the story of our relentless curiosity, our desire to understand the world around us and the universe within us. And it is the story of our enduring hope that something of us, our bodies, our names, our stories, will survive. The Egyptians placed their faith in mummification and magic. Today, we place our faith in science and data. But the fundamental human desire remains the same. As we continue to dig in the sand to scan the mummies and to decode the hieroglyphs, we are not just looking at the past. As Marcus Aurelius told us, we are looking at a mirror, and in the eyes of the ancients we can, perhaps, foresee our own future.